Welcome to Tending the After. I hope you're having a peaceful morning. I'm Heather, an administrative guide to the bereaved. I help the bereaved trade corporations for community and paperwork for people. Welcome back to the checklist series. If you haven't listened to the 66 item summary, that is available in the summary episode. Today, I'm jumping right in to immediately after someone has died. Step 1. Make arrangements for any pets, dependent adults, or minor children. I touched briefly on this in the summary episode, but if there are pets or people that wouldn't be fed without the newly deceased, they need your immediate consideration. I'm not going to focus too much on minor children, as I feel like most people would immediately be concerned for their well-being, which is lovely. But dependent adults get a little more tricky, especially depending on the level of care and support they need and any unspoken support that the deceased may have been providing to compensate for them. So I will start with pets, the loved ones who you can't be sure understand that their owner is gone. So science has been coming around to show that many animals do grieve and show physical signs of distress after the loss of their humans. Those signs can include lethargy or being excessively tired, reduced appetite, changes in vocal quality or how often they are vocalizing, and disturbed sleep patterns, whether that can be insomnia or excessive sleeping. There is a deep emotional world for an animal who's lost someone. Some sources suggest, if they are able, to be allowed near the deceased to confirm their death with their own nose, and to keep some scent-laden objects sealed for them to sniff later on. If you don't own a pet, it may be hard to believe, but reports suggest that 90% of American households have a pet, and unfortunately, only 34% of Americans will have a will. How are those statistics related? Pets are legally, usually, considered property. I suppose I should include my disclaimer here that I am not a lawyer. This is not legal advice. This is just information you could find on the internet, brought together for you for education and entertainment. So, how can you help your pet before a death? One way is to plan for their care in your will and naming a person to care for them. And if you are in Florida, and I would check in your state, but you can set up a pet trust. This is available under Florida Trust Code Statute 736.0408. This sets aside funds to be allocated to a named person for the benefit of your named pet. For some tips when identifying a pet to be cared for, be specific. So don't just say, even if you're writing out in the will and you thought you had it covered, don't just say my dog. You want to say the breed and name they go by. So my Shiba Inu named Kuma. And make sure that the person you're naming is actually willing to care for them. Just because you write it down in your will doesn't mean that after you're gone, they necessarily have to take on your pet. That might be like a step in the legal process, but you could get there, and if they say no, they just go to the next thing. So be sure that you're actually including people in that decision. You will want to include care instructions like habits, preferred foods, expected expenses, and other things that can help someone be prepared to take care of this pet. If someone dies without a will specifying their person to watch over the pet, then it may fall to the next person living in the household. And if the person lived alone, then that pet may be surrendered. So there are essentially 4 options with some room for imagination. After someone dies, you can either A, keep the pet. They are now part of your family. That's kind of the most simple. You just take in the pet. It would get more complicated if there are other people wanting pet ownership, and then you might have to get into some legal disputes because, like I said, pets are considered property legally, usually. And if there's nothing set aside beforehand about who gets the pet, then there may be pre-established legal order about who has the earliest right to care for this pet. 2, you can ask loved ones to adopt the pet. So that can be friends, family, your immediate circle. If you are, for whatever reason, taking care of your loved one's estate and are unwilling or unable, you can ask your immediate circles if someone would be willing to adopt this pet. You can also find foster care or be foster care while you search for a home. So maybe you know that for whatever reason, you can't take on this pet long term, but you don't want to go into the final option of surrendering them. You can foster the pet temporarily. That's a totally fine option while looking for a long-term placement. Or you can place them with other foster groups that will help find long-term placement. And then finally, surrendering a pet. This is the least desired option. It's very stressful for the pet. Even if you try to find a no-kill shelter, they are usually very full. And I'm sure if the deceased loved their pet very much, it would just break their heart not to guilt anyone into keeping a pet that they cannot keep. But we do consider surrender to kind of be our last step. Ways you can help your pet before any of this happens. So as I discussed, you could include them in your will, but this is going to seem strange. You can help your pet by training them. People get very defensive. You might be thinking, what? You can't tell me how to love my animal. Yes, I know. But if your pet has bad habits that you lovingly ignore because it's cute and endearing to you, you risk that they won't be adopted, or at least adopted quickly after losing you. You can still keep that deep bond and have things that are only okay with you, but a well-trained pet is much easier to take in, especially suddenly, than a poorly trained pet who is also grieving and may be a bit emotionally rattled. This episode is brought to you by my Destination Death Planning Retreat, where we're going to be checking off to-do lists and bucket lists. If hearing about the ways your beloved pet might struggle after you're gone has you thinking that you need to do something, but it's still hard, we will handle the hard stuff like planning for the end of life and your animal friends. But we're also going to explore the jungle in search of waterfalls, wander around Old Town, and relax on the beach. It's about finding peace in the process. Join me for the Peace Plan webinar on April 27th to see how this kind of planning can actually feel freeing. And here's a bonus. The 5-day challenge finishers who register online will be entered to win a special prize at the webinar. So be sure to sign up and come ready to win. Save your spot at yourjcd.com/webinar. Link will be in the show notes. Welcome back. We just finished talking about how your pets need you to carefully plan for them. I described a person who took over caring for them, maybe by default, maybe as prescribed in the will. So as I mentioned, pets are legally usually considered property. So they have owners. People are, well, people. So if someone needs to care for a person, that person, depending on the age and degree of need, may be assigned a guardian. Guardianship is very serious and usually a last resort, especially for adults who are assumed to have autonomy, as having a guardian by default can limit a person's autonomy. Children's parents are their natural guardian, barring unique factors, and a person can be assigned a legal guardian even when there is not a death, but this is a legal matter handled in the courts. This makes it harder to initiate, but also harder to undo. So if you are just helping someone to do activities of daily living or instrumental activities of daily living, if you aren't sure what those might be, I will include them in the show notes. I say this as someone who has worked with Adult Protective Services and done years of research with those ADLs, IADLs, activities of daily living and instrumental activities of daily living. They are the barometer that we tend to use for measuring functioning. And you need to document what you are helping with, how often, and to what degree. Now, this doesn't have to be all the time, not like you're clocking in, clocking out, but there needs to be an accessible record that someone besides you knows about. If you are doing these secret acts of kindness, that is so kind and so caring. But without you, this person may not ask for more help and could deteriorate physically, mentally, or both to the point of needing more extreme interventions, potentially including guardianship. So that was insight into immediate actions after someone has died, find immediate care, and make long-term plans for the care of pets, dependent adults, and children. Planning ahead is always a good idea, even if the plan isn't perfect. There are still 65 other tasks, and making sure dependents are cared for is not a one-off item. I hope you'll choose peace of mind for you and clarity for the loved one picking up in the wake of losing you. For now, have a good night and a peaceful morning. I'll check in again next time.